I'm thinking a lot recently, reflecting back. Um, as I'm reflecting back and as I'm thinking about the future and things like that, I really have been thinking about my legacy. And it's not something that I necessarily thought about until recently. And I think maybe some of the reason is because of like sports right now. A lot of people are calling people like Tom Brady, LeBron James, whoever, the GOAT, right? So I'm thinking, oh, I want to be the GOAT in something. And obviously you guys have heard me say before, I want to be the GOAT. But I've been thinking about my legacy a lot. I've been thinking about, you know, when I throw in the towel, if you will, when I retire, when people look back at Zack Miller in 100 years, hopefully I'm still alive, obviously. That would be like I'm 134 and I'm 134 years old. That would be amazing. Unlikely, but but I've been thinking about my legacy. I've been thinking about, in a decade, in 20 years, and even 2 years, in 50 years, what are people going to think about me, and what kind of lives did I impact, and things like that. And one thing that I think over the last decade that I don't regret anything that I do in my life. I don't make mistakes in that kind of way. Like I think everything happens for a reason. But something that I think I wish I would have done more of was to reflect back and reflect early and often. It's something that I do a lot now because I think it's very powerful. But as I am thinking about my legacy, I recognized that none of this would have happened had I not done this one thing. Now, I went to school, West Virginia University, had the blast of a lifetime. Loved that place, loved being there, loved that university, near and dear to my heart. Went to journalism school, have a degree in broadcast news from West Virginia University. Go Mountaineers. Then I went and immediately went into TV news, and I worked in a top 50 market, which a lot of my friends who went to school did not. They started working in cities that you've never heard of across the country, like Jonesboro, Arkansas, which was where I almost went and worked right out of college. Now, I went to school immediately followed by going and getting my first job out of college. Left with a ton of debt, but this is not a story about that. I enjoyed it for the first year. I worked there for exactly 3 years. I started, I believe, on September 24th of 2007, and I left on September 24th of 2010. The first year was fun. And then the honeymoon went away, basically, right? And so I recognized that it wasn't for me anymore. But I stayed there for 2 years. And I remember I kept going, I want something different, I want something more. But I think in our heads, oftentimes, we stick and stay at a place because we don't know something else. And I remember I was looking for jobs. Basically, there was a big fallout in the end of the second year of my journey in TV world, and I just really decided it wasn't for me anymore. But I kept looking for jobs at place after place after place, and I recognized that it was basically the same job everywhere, just maybe skinned a little differently. And it sucks seeing and meeting someone on the worst day of their life every single day. And a newsroom is a very negative place, and I wanted to do more with my life. And this is where the story gets really interesting. So I decided to leave, to start a different career, to get into my business world. And this is roughly, I guess, 2 weeks before September 24th. So roughly September 10th of 2010, I put in, quote unquote, my 2 weeks. And I gave it to my first superior, who I've stayed in touch with. And he then said, okay, we need to go talk to the real boss man. And at this point, I'd made my decision. I was going to leave. What's interesting is all the people before me had given their 2 weeks and were basically just given the door. So I was anticipating that I was not, this individual and I did not get along very well. And I learned a lot about my business career, leadership, on what not to do from this person. And so we go into this meeting, and I'm fully anticipating, fully expecting Tina, which is her name, to say, "You're done, bye, bye, bye," just like the NSYNC song. I wanted more for my life, and I knew that, and I decided that it was time. I had jumped into a new career, into my business career, and I was ready to go full steam ahead on that. But here's what happened. I get into that room, and Tina says something along the lines of, "Zack, I'm shocked by this." And I'm thinking, why are you shocked? Like, this is ridiculous. So and she goes, "Well, we'd like to keep you around. You know, we can give you a raise. We can do all this stuff." And I'm thinking to myself, this is over 3 years in the making now, 2+ negative, that I'm sitting here and you want to keep me now? But I think oftentimes, and this is what I really want to hit at, oftentimes people are in this situation. Oftentimes people are put in a situation where they hit a roadblock. They want something new. They know that there's that other thing on that path that they want, and then they hit the roadblock and they stick with it. And that's what I think a lot of people do. And remember, I'm thinking about now my legacy and how I want to go down as the GOAT, the greatest kind of marketer in the world, the greatest anomaly ever, the person that stood out so much. But it never would have happened had I not said, "Dear Tina, I quit." And then when I do that and she tries to get me to stay, I remember I had to sit there and say, what am I going to do? And I remember I said something along the lines of, "I appreciate that, but this is what I have to do for my career." And that was it. And I stayed 2 more weeks. I got those 2 days in. But had I not, a lot of people will fold under pressure. A lot of people would have stayed there. I've seen it happen. A lot of people will stick at that career, even though they know they want something more, right? A lot of people have goals. Most people have goals, right? And then a roadblock hits, and they're like, I'll take the easy way out. The easy way out, even though it wasn't the positive one, even though it wasn't the one that I wanted, the easy way out was for me to say, okay, I'll stay and continue to be miserable and continue to go through that process over and over and over again. But oftentimes, almost every day, by the way, a roadblock hits. It's what we do when that roadblock hits that matters. In this case, I could 10 years later now, right? As I record this, March 14, 2019, it's almost been 10 years since I've been in that world. In the world that I invested, north of, $80,000, $90,000 in college tuition to get to. I spent 3 years of my business career, or 3 years of my journalism career there, but I was miserable. And again, oftentimes, roadblock hits, and we say, I quit the wrong way. Or we give up. And so, if you want something, when you set that goal, you want it, there's going to be times where you're going to be bored with it. There's going to be times when you go through it and you're like, I really don't want to do this. Or you're going to have to make basically off-the-cuff decisions. Just make sure that when you're making those decisions, just make sure that when you are thinking about this, think about the long run, right? I could have said, I will stay, but I didn't. And I think back and I reflect back and I think about this whole thing about legacy right now. What would have happened had I stayed there? And I'll leave you with this. What happens if you don't? You know what you can do in your life. You know what can happen if you leave, if you do that thing that you want. So when I was under pressure and told that I needed to stay or was asked to stay, I said, no way, Jose, and I left. And so as you're maybe considering quitting something right now, maybe you're considering giving in the towel, make sure that if you are giving in that towel, or if there's a roadblock along the way, make sure you're doing it for the reasons that you want. And make sure that just because something might suck or might be hard, that doesn't mean that you should quit. But oftentimes, if you're in a miserable place and you want more with your life, it may be time to throw in that towel. Just make sure you think about it full circle. Because if you don't, think about this. Where would I be? You guys would never know me if I didn't throw in that towel that day. If I didn't say, hey, no, I'm out. But I believed more in myself, and I wanted more out of myself, and that's what I had to do. And so when that roadblock hit, I was like, no way, Jose, I'm out. Because of that, I get to talk to you guys each and every day. Appreciate you. You're listening to Zack Miller Says.